Hello, MMOA community. My name is Annoushka Ranaraja. I'm a member of the Modern Management Division of the Clinical Institute Excellence. Today, we're going to talk about automaticity of movement. Automaticity or procedural memory refers to how well you do an action while things are happening around you, which then impacts how well you function in a busy world. Automaticity is a hallmark feature of walking in adults who are healthy and well functioning. We really see changes in procedural memory in people with Parkinson's disease, post stroke, and in people with dementia due to the changes in their brain. It is very important that we train for automaticity on activities that we typically use procedural memory for, like swallowing, dressing, feeding, and walking, because training this can be the difference between a patient safely making it across the parking lot, swallowing while attending to environmental distractions, or even making it in time to the phone that is ringing before the other person hangs up. We sometimes think that it's like riding a bike and they will pick it right back up where they were, but then they fall in the clinic because they were watching someone else doing something and got distracted. So we need to train them in a more realistic situation, which involves dual task training and decreasing visual dependence. True dual tasking is actively performing two tasks that can be performed independently, measured separately, and have distinct goals. So while sometimes not sometimes, we've actually been testing dual task, typically as carrying a cup of water as we walk through the doorway, or while we do the tug challenge, right? Mike Studer talks about a way to assess true dual task in one of his stroke rehab lectures, which looks at the percentage difference in time it takes to perform a dual task from a single task. And I can actually link that in the comments because I do think it's very helpful. There's just not research for normative measures on that. So for now, you can always use the regular dual task that we have that's measured. So, like the freezing of gait assessment or for the tug itself. But for now, while we're testing and until there's research for the other dual task measures, we just need to train what we're seeing in the clinic. So, ways that we train dual tasking can include zipping up a jacket while having a conversation or walking, right? Like, does your patient have difficulty dressing? Do they have difficulty with distractions while walking? And that's when they're tripping. Look at those different situations. Does your patient need to work on feeding themselves while reading a newspaper or reviewing steps on how to perform a familiar task while walking over around objects? Some other cog dual task challenges that I like to include can be walking while just holding a conversation, something that's simple. But other things like counting backwards, reciting every other letter of the alphabet, listing a grocery list, or even I'll have them teach me their favorite recipe because some people like that and they have it a little bit more memorized. So it's kind of not really procedural, but it's kind of procedural to them. So you'll add that into the new task of add that into walking, but you can really see where their deficits are with that. Another thing that we can work on to really help with the procedural memory and automaticity is decreasing visual dependence. Although we know that there are a lot of vestibular changes in older adults, we can still train strategies with our patients that that are super important because we don't want our patients tripping over things. Like I have a patient that tripped over their dog, fell, broke their hip. And something that would be easier, their dog was lying down, so it's not like they jumped in front of them, but it's just something that makes it easier for them to be aware of. So we train things like scanning the environment a little bit more, or even just training them to use their peripherals a little bit better. They might just be a little bit more aware of like they always look at their feet, so they don't ever try to work on their peripheral vision. Obviously, some people lose some of their peripheral vision, but again, just things that we train for. So, some strategies I like to use are having a patient holding a ball in front of them while walking over an obstacle course. I love the tidal tank. If you've seen my videos, you know I throw that in as much as I can because it also adds a balance challenge. But it helps obstruct the view of their feet. So, another reason I like that. Cueing them to look 3 steps ahead while walking over around the obstacles. I'll have patients do that in the clinic, then also if I can get them outside and have them walking over ground and just having them look a little bit more ahead of them, typically they're still able to detect that change in their environment. You'll have some instances where that isn't the case, but the more I train it, the better I do see it get. Another thing I like to do is playing I Spy or having objects hidden through the clinic and having them look for those things. So play I Spy while you walk around or while you're having them do tasks with their hands. Just add things in that they can do. So while we think a patient may be falling because they aren't paying attention to what they're doing, we may actually need to evaluate and to if we're able to make it something more automatic for them again. So people that I typically will have issues with changing that automaticity is more so with my patients with PSP. And then you do have that added component of their cognitive may not be able to catch up to that procedural memory. And then sometimes it's just like our patients earlier in stroke or more progressed with dementia have a harder time repurposing that. And in those instances, they more likely than not are going to need to have a caregiver with them. But we are not going to know until we actually try those different situations out. And trying those different situations out will better integrate them into their community, right? So, for a quick recap, improving automaticity of things like walking, feeding, dressing, or swallowing, which are typically procedural memory, is necessary to improve the patient's independence. At the end of the day, we want them to be safe, and there will be situations where patients need to pay attention to their steps, and that's their highest priority because of their situation, their neurological disorder, their progression. But for at least until they can get to the point where that's more automatic, or for all our other patients, we really need to focus on that cognitive and motor dual task training and decreasing that visual dependence. So it allows them to interact with their environment, be back with their families and friends in a safe way. Um, And really, if you can incorporate those different things just based on what you're seeing in the clinic or what they're reporting or what families are reporting based on when they're falling, that can really help improve a lot of their safety and just let them thrive in their environments. Thank you so much for joining me on this holiday weekend. I hope you enjoy time with your friends and families. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me or drop them in the chat. And I hope you have a happy holiday.